Right, clap one on three. 1, 2, 3. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of True Crime and Cocktails. We're so glad that you're here. As always, I am your host, Lauren Ash, and as always, I am joined by my co-hostess with the mostess, Christy Oxborrow. How you feeling?
Doing great. Excited to
Fantastic.
be here.
Me both, sister. You and
Hey,
me both.
I like that.
Yeah. Um, you're gonna love this. Now, I know we talked about, and I'm gonna say this. This is a non-trigger warning. I'm not gonna get into anything about dental trauma, but we've talked about a lot of dental
Sure.
stuff on the show.
Yes.
And I gotta tell you, this week I have had just a just a wild ride. First of all, listen, shout out to Dr. Agil over at Exquisite Dentistry here in Los Angeles. As I've said before, my bad dental experiences are not with my current dentist. He's
Sure.
a gem and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this week I went in for some teeth whitening.
Sure.
Nobody gets hurt. You know what I mean? Just give a
Yes.
little freshen up. And what I came to learn was when you get your teeth whitened at the dentist, they say that for like 48 hours afterwards, you can't eat anything that's like color. Like, don't drink coffee, don't eat tomato sauce. Like, you got to make sure
Oh,
you're not, because the pores, I guess, of the enamel are open and they don't want it to
of course.
absorb. So as I was leaving, my gal there was like, yeah, maybe just try to stick to like chicken and rice and stuff. And I was like, the diet of a dog with an upset stomach. Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. So
Uh-huh.
what then happened was I have been an absolute terror for the past 2 days because I have not
Mhm.
had a drop of Diet Coke. I have not
Oh,
had
sure.
anything fun. This isn't any way I want to live my life. What about my daily Twizzlers? This is insane. This is
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah. These
So
are things that they don't tell you in advance.
they don't, because they know me. They know I would have been like, can't do it. Can't do it.
Mhm.
Not possible. So listen, I'm glad that I didn't know ahead of time because I wouldn't have done it. But here's what I'll also say. I'm celebrating with a glass of white wine here because my window of time, by the way, it was like at the 48-hour mark. Like, it wasn't like I gave it 2 full days. I was like, well, it's been exactly 48 hours since when I finished. So pour her a drink. Like, it was,
Mhm.
probably
Mhm.
not. I mean, in the past 3 hours, 4 hours that I've been back on solids, let's put it that way. I
Oh,
mean, I've had a Diet Coke. I ate slices of pizza. Now I'm onto white wine. Like, I'm doing all the things. So fingers
I
crossed.
I want you to know that I really thought you were gonna raise a can of Diet Coke with a Twizzler straw. It's It's what I thought you were gonna I thought you were gonna be like, layer them to get them further into my face, because
Yeah.
that I get.
And I guess what I'm learning from this is I don't like limits. I don't like being told
No,
what I can and cannot do. Did I
no.
need to eat trash or drink Diet Coke for 2 days? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Did I survive it? Of course. Was I happy about it? Hard no.
Yeah.
Hard no.
I mean, you do recall when I sent you that message and was like, I didn't even think about my last appointment and my dentist being like, stick to soft foods for a while. And I was like, soft foods. And then I texted Lauren and I was like, you know what's soft? Fucking cheesecake. And I have consumed cheesecake at an alarming rate in the
Yeah.
last like 2 weeks of my life. Um, yeah, I learned like it again, these are things they didn't warn me in advance.
Right.
Like, I knew, I was like, oh, I'm probably gonna have to be, I knew soft foods probably for at least a day or two. I knew that. But what I didn't know is it would be longer than that. And I also didn't know that they were gonna be like, well, it's gonna be difficult to like take like a big bite of something. So there goes sandwiches, burgers. We had burgers and I had to, like a fucking princess, knife and fork that little patty and just have just a sad patty on its own because I couldn't get my mouth around that burger that I really, really wanted.
Look,
Yeah.
what we're saying is the women of True Crime and Cocktails have been tested
Yes.
and ultimately are persevering.
Yes.
in the
I
face of adversity.
look, it's all about like, can you, I love that the word has completely left me, but like, can you enter a situation and then like adapt to your new ways? And when I can't take a big bite of burger like I want, it didn't mean I've not gone to McDonald's. It just means I just stuck to nugs. Last night,
Oh no.
we were doing McDonald's and I was like, you know what? It's time. I'm ready. I want to try. I want to go for a burger because it's my go-to and I'm ready and I'm just so ready. My middle son got a burger, but he wanted that bitch plain. Like he wanted a double cheeseburger, but the only thing on it, the meat and some ketchup. Like that's and the bun. But like that's it. That's how plain he wanted it. So that we were like, okay, great. They did put cheese on both patties. He did not want cheese at all. We did not know this till we got home. So I'm sitting there going, well, what do you do as a mother to spare you from driving all the way back and whatever? So I looked at my burger and realized, well, my second patty doesn't have a ton of cheese on it. So I took my second patty out and put it between his little buns. So it was very like different and weird for him. But so the point is, I ended up with like a single quarter pounder, which to me is a fucking nightmare because it's too much bread for that much meat.
Yeah.
I need the double so that I can balance the meat to bun. So needless to say, I got so excited about finally getting my, if I may, signature dish. And it was sad. I was sad for most of it.
And because you're a good mother.
I fell on that sword for him.
You did.
I did. And then he barely ate it.
No.
So by the time I was done, like in the end, he got like some extra nuggets off someone. I offered him extra fries. He was fine. He didn't want anything. And in the end, did I take his two little double over cheesed patties and just like nibble on them like a small rat in the corner? I absolutely did. So the point is, I was sad the whole time, but I still kind of was the life of the party.
I love that. I love that.
What a bonehead.
It's interesting. Doesn't he normally eat cheese? Was he just in a mood?
Well, see, that's the thing. That one doesn't really like cheese when it's melted, but he
Okay.
also kind of only likes cheese when it's melted. Well, see, here you go. So he wants his burgers without cheese because he says, I don't like melted cheese.
Okay.
Understood. Tonight, I made a lasagna. Delicious. And I suddenly got the thought serving it, putting it on his plate, and went, wait a minute. He hates melted cheese. I'll just take that top cheese noodle layer, take it off, give it to the child who loves cheese, and then I'll be like fucking parent of the year. 2 bites in, he went, I prefer it with the cheese. So that's motherhood in a nutshell. I thought I did a real solid for him. And I didn't. And one may say, well, just take the cheese layer off the other kid's plate and put it on. I'd put so much Parmesan on the other kid's plate because he is basically his bloodstream is like 90% Parmesan. So I put so much Parmesan on it. It's like, well, he's not going to want it back. I offered him my top layer. Like in the end, he was just very like, it's fine. And I'm like, good Lord. It never works out like you think it's gonna,
I get that.
you
When I was a
know?
kid, I used to take a slice of Wonder Bread and
Mhm.
toast it and then butter it with margarine and then put about an inch thick layer of Kraft Parmesan cheese on there.
Oh, sure.
Like if you sneezed, it would be gone. Like
Of
it would
course.
be like it would be like blowing magic fairy dust into whatever the cave of
Sure.
wonders. Um, I loved that so much.
Yeah.
So much. And I haven't done that in a maybe you know what? Maybe I should dust off that old snack.
Hey,
It's
well,
hard to eat
Parmesan
because
is the dust of cheese.
it is the cheese of dust. The dust of cheese. I said the cheese of dust.
Yeah. Well, either way, the point is dusting it off is appropriate when it's
All we
Parmesan.
are is parm in the wind.
Yep.
Thank you and good night. I think it's just tough to eat because it slides off because it's not meant to be eaten that way.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Look, as a kid, if we're getting into cheese recipes from our youth, I used to like, you take the white bread, you put on like a slightly thicker slice of like marble cheese than what you think is right. And you put the enough of it on that it covers the entire bread. You put another bread over top and you pop that bitch in the microwave for like a minute. So it comes out piping hot. And the bread, you're like, I don't want to touch it. But then you go to pull it and it's just a lazy grilled cheese. And I loved it in my youth. And it's like, well, yeah, no wonder I put on some pounds because I was a string bean when I was like 8. And then I got to a point where it was like, oh, someone got a little less string beanie. It's because I was eating fucking poor man, lazy ass grilled cheese sandwiches. Like, oh, like it was going out of style.
Yeah.
I did try one as an adult and went, I understand. Because the cheese just gets like a little greasy and you're like, it's wrong, but delicious. Like it was, I get
I
it.
used to like taking round tortilla chips
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
then cutting a square of cheese that's bigger than it needs to be. And so you'd
Mhm.
only get like 5 or 6 of those big tortilla chips on a plate and then a giant chunk of cheese on each. Too big. And then, yeah, microwave, same thing. And it was like, my mouth is watering. It was too much cheese for the chip. It was too much altogether, but yeah, it's everything you want it to be.
Look, I'm
Same
gonna
thing you're
say it.
talking about.
You
Little too
know,
greasy, you know?
you know what this is reminding me of? It's I would say it would teach it's taught me something, but I've always known this about us. We are easy to please.
Yeah.
Fucking microwave some cheese, and we're like, "Wow, greatest thing I've ever had."
Yeah.
Delicacy. Like we're bridge trolls.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
why going back to your that's why even just 2 days when they're like, FYI, you can't have what you love. That's why that's like a
Yeah.
sword in the eye. I don't know why it had to be a sword.
Yeah. Well, a knife feels like it would like a sword is overkill.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that that is part of it too. I think it's, it's like it's so easy. We're very simple. Again, my daily Twizzler. That's nice.
Yeah.
I'm
See,
not
it's
asking
something
for a
you look
lot.
forward to.
Yeah, because in this life, what is there to look forward to? Really?
It's true. Just focus on the joy.
You have to.
And your joy is Twizzlers.
It is.
That's nice.
Right now, I'm on a kick, you know?
Well, that's the thing. Same like we do this all the time where we have a thing we love
Yeah.
and we love it to a point, and then we're like, meh, and then we
I got to
move
tell
on to
you
something else.
very quickly. Now, this
Yeah.
just sounds like we're just checking off a list of businesses we're trying to plug. It's not. We don't get money from any of these things or people. Sonic.
Oh, sure.
I'd
The
only ever been
business,
to
not the hedgehog,
Thank you very much. I'd
of
only
course.
ever been to one once years ago, and recently there's none in LA. You got to drive. It's like an hour. You got to get
Oof.
drive to it. So we were driving out of town, and we thought, let's stop and see what there is to see. And we ordered an uncomfortable amount of food. It was
Nice.
myself, my boyfriend, and shout out friend of the podcast, Ashley Botting. And it was like a comical amount of food.
Mhm.
Beautiful. Tried it all. To me, outstanding. I think it is. I mean, it's a solid product. However, they do what's essentially like a Dairy Queen Blizzard. They
Okay.
do it. They do one of them with Reese peanut butter cups. And when I tell you, I think for me, hands down, it is the best ice cream treat I've ever had in my life. I said as I was eating my first couple of bites of it, it puts Dairy Queen to shame. And I love Dairy Queen.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow. You
Yeah.
heard it first.
Did I insist on us going back to a Sonic as we were driving back. Yeah.
Why
Yes, of
wouldn't
course I
you?
did. Of
It's
course
an
I
hour
did.
away. You take advantage while you're there.
You got to. We were passing back by. I was like, guess what? Did I then say maybe a third? Yeah. We stopped at one near where we were. And then when we got back closer to town, we stopped again. That's not the point. That's not the
We
point.
literally just said focus on joy.
Focus on joy. And
Yeah.
I got to tell you, yeah, the Sonic Blast, I think that's what they call them. A blast
And
with
it
the
was.
Reese's peanut butter cups. I mean, I don't know what to tell you, but just look at, I mean, I know that this is the drawing for the website, but look at the amount that's in there.
That's a lot.
This isn't one of those you're going to get a bite every so many bites of chocolate. This is every bite is
Well, and
almost too blasted
too blessed.
in a way, in a good way.
It's like, and look, Dairy Queen, maybe this is your teachable moment.
Area of opportunity.
Add more filling.
Thank you.
Bring back the fucking Reese's Pieces, Blizzard, while we're at it, please. Nobody asked you to get rid of it. They brought it back last year as like a seasonal limited edition. I'm like, how is a fucking Reese's Pieces ever seasonal? They're year round. You're not picking them off a vine. They're always available. Put them in the fucking soft serve and sell it to me. I'm not even asking for it for free. Just sell it to me.
Oh, I'll pay top dollar. Top
Right?
dollar. Yeah, I got no
Right?
problem whipping out a credit card here. No problem. I got to tell you, I went to Dairy Queen for the first time in a while when I was back in Toronto last year. And you know what else they've discontinued? Crispy Crunch. Now, that's a chocolate bar we can only get in Canada. You don't have that in the United States. And it was always my go-to.
Oh, sure.
And let me tell you a little something. When I went in there and it wasn't even first of all, there was like 4 options at this Dairy Queen for blizzards. Very, very scarce in terms of options.
Why are they even open?
Well, this is what I started to think. Is it not long for this world? I don't know. Hot eats, cool treats is maybe not doing it anymore. I don't know.
It's possible. We here in town, Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, we have like a large Dairy Queen where you can like go in, do the whole thing, hot eat, cool treat, what have you. But then we have a smaller one in a different spot in town that's just the ice cream and it's only open in the summer months. And I don't think it opened last summer. I think they kept that bitch boarded up. And it's a real shame. I will say, went oh god, probably about a month ago. So I guess I'm due to go back. God, probably but long before this time tomorrow, easily within 15 hours, I'll have consumed Dairy Queen. But they brought out a new one for Valentine's Day. It was a red velvet.
Oh.
And look, I'm gonna say it. I love a red velvet.
Same.
Basically because I love cream cheese frosting, and that's just the vehicle it comes in.
Yep.
Now, it was you got your soft serve. It's red, which I'm convinced is just a food coloring. But then there's like they put cream cheese frosting, bits of the red velvet cake, and of course they mush it around and then they hand it to you. I really enjoyed it, but the whole time kept thinking, I just wish there was no cake bits. Or I wish it was just literally crumbs. Like, just literally fill the thing half with soft serve, half with cream cheese frosting, and hand it to my fat ass, and I will happily take it because that's all I want. And half the time you could probably skip the ice cream. The point is, I've had it once again since then because I had to verify. I feel like the cake bits were almost like a little stale. So every time you got one, it kind of like threw off the Emperor's Groove. And I was not overly happy about it. But again, just that soft serve with a little bit of cream cheese every once in a while. Fuck yeah. Oh, I was on board.
This is like when McDonald's had the limited edition McFlurry in Canada anyway, and it was the Cadbury cream egg.
Oh,
and what they would do was they put soft serve in. They'd have broken pieces of the milk chocolate cream egg. And then they had like a ketchup bottle, mustard bottle, like a condiment bottle filled with the icing. and they'd squirt
Oh.
that in. Zip, zip in your lip.
Have you seen, or I guess it would be easier to tell, have you held a Cadbury cream egg in the last few years? I came at you very
It's
earnest.
so specific. It just it really tickled me. No, I don't know that I have, to be honest. I don't
Well,
know
I
that I
don't
have.
I don't want to crush your soul. So much smaller than they used to be.
Oh,
And this is not a case of my hands are larger than when I was a child and my brain can't comprehend. No, they've gotten smaller and they charge so much more for them. So
really?
it's like, what are we doing here? Well, gouging the customers is what we're doing because that's what everybody does. Crispers, we see what you've done. We've stopped buying your product because of it, just so you know. They charge more for smaller bags.
Here's what it is.
Mhm.
I don't want things to be inflated. I don't want the cost of things to be inflated.
Sure.
No one does.
Of
I
course.
was reading that at Halloween time, there was going to be different size, this was in Canada, different sized M&Ms, like candy
Yeah.
treats that you hand out, and one of them was only going to have apparently 2 or 3, I can't remember which it was, M&Ms in it. And here's what it is for me. I don't want the price to me to be higher, but that's a slap in the face. So, if you
Yes.
need to charge me more so that the little packet has, like, 12 to 15 or whatever it is,
Sure.
you know what I mean? Like, it's not saving us money, is my point, because they're charging the same amount for less, and that's where it gets me. If
Oh,
you're raising the price, but the product size is staying the same, I can wrap my head around it. I don't like it, but I can
sure.
wrap my head around it and go, everything is getting more expensive. This is, you know, overwhelming,
Yeah.
but it's not the only thing. Like, this is happening across the board. But it's the downsizing and
Yep.
then charging more, or the downsizing to 2 M&Ms in a pack, that to me is just an insult of our intelligence as consumers.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
insulting.
If they think we aren't on to them, it's like we absolutely are. It's like
Yes.
craft dinner's gotten smaller. Macaroni and cheese, so sorry. Like, the
Yeah.
boxes are now, less weight than they used to be. Every single time I'm at a grocery store, I go through a full tirade about the expense of soup now. Every time. It's suddenly like, I'm a retiree with nothing but time on my hands, and I'm like, "Remember when soup cost 50 cents?
Yeah.
A can of soup now, over $2."
That is
I'm like,
pricey.
"What the fuck, Campbell's?" Like, stop it. Don't act like your soup is like 5 stars. Get out of town. Get out of town.
Yeah.
Like, something that I slap in a microwave, or, if I'm too lazy to use a stovetop, which I've already proven I am, it's just get out. It's too much. There was a sale one day. It was 4 for $5.
That's
And I was like,
pricey.
even that is wild to me.
Buck and a quarter a can.
It's insane.
Why
What are
don't I
they
have to
doing?
prove that I could do the math? Why? Why?
I
I'm
look, you wanna remind us of the math award. I couldn't be happier. And look, if I had ever won a math award, I'd be still bragging about it to this day.
feel like I kept a lot of the math though. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like it was one of those times where
Oh.
at the time I was good at math, but like if you showed me any of that shit now, I think I'd be like, oh,
Oh,
I'm
I
lost. I'm
absolutely
hooked.
failed, math in high school, and it shows. I didn't get any better.
I don't think I would be any better now, is my point. Like, it didn't stick with
Sure,
me. I
sure.
mean,
Oh,
I could
there are
do like
so
the
few things that
basics.
stuck with me from things I learned in high school that it's like, "Huh."
My boyfriend has been doing these like brain teasers. There's like an app and there's like all these
Oh,
different kinds, and
sure.
it's all across the map of what they are, whether it's English or whatever, or math. And there was one he was showing me and it was fractions. And I was like, you're doing fractions like on your own time? Like, this is a
That's adorable.
nightmare to me. Yeah, but I was like, the first couple, I was like, okay, okay, I remember this. Okay. And then I got immediately completely lost. And I
Yes.
just got angry about it because I do have a math award in my repertoire. And
Of
I feel
course.
like I should potentially still know how to do fractions. But I guess much like we've been talking about in prior episodes about something completely different, if you don't use it, you lose it. So
Yeah. Yeah. And
yeah.
look, 2 questions. 1,
Yeah.
do you still have the math award?
Wonder if it's somewhere in my parents' house. It might be.
And my second question is, how fast can we get it on that wall behind you somewhere? So it's just like always like, what's this? Or even in the cabinet where it's like, what's that? Oh, that's my math award.
Oh, listen, shout out Mother Laurel. She listens to all these episodes. I don't even, maybe now I don't have to ask. She'll get this note and she'll be on it and then it'll just show up at my doorstep. That'd
Well,
be nice.
she's gonna hear this. We're gonna
Yeah,
forget we've had this conversation.
100%. We forget immediately.
She's gonna then text you and it'll just say like it's in the mail, and you'll be like,
Yeah,
"What the fuck does that mean?" It'll be a surprise. I mean, God, I have band awards from the 5th grade back there, so
that's nice.
you should absolutely have a math award.
Yeah.
Well, those band awards are not because I was good. They gave me them for spirit. Which means which is the '80s way of saying ADHD, essentially. Spirited child. Very
Yeah.
spirited. Yeah.
Well, I also want to remind you, I did get an award for basketball
Hey!
in I believe 10th grade, and it was MDP, most deserving player. So
Oh, do you
that's
still
not
have
an
that
award.
kicking around?
I hope that I do have that somewhere.
Because
I
I nothing would tickle me more. The next time we open this Zoom
Yep,
screen, you're
yep,
just covered in awards. That would tickle me a lot.
yeah. Well, listen, never say never. I will say I also won the Film Studies Award,
Oh.
and, my prize was a bio I can't even get it out. My prize was a biography of Jodie Foster because everybody felt that I looked like Jodie Foster, and that was my prize, and I was like, "I like that this isn't a plaque, it's a book." But hey, I still remember it.
Did you know Jodie was originally supposed to be Princess Leia?
I did not know that. Interesting. Would have been a different film.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
I think she said that she was signed on to do something else at the time and couldn't break contract, and then she was also like, "Space opera? Oh." Like, at the time, no one thought it was gonna be anything, so she was like,
Of
"Eh, whatever."
course.
And now she's like, "Ah,
I wonder
where."
how she would have reacted to George Lucas telling her that there is no underwear in space, like he told,
Oh,
um, Carrie
I just
Fisher.
feel like she would have brought a very different vibe.
Yeah, I think she would have been great. I think it would have just been very different. Yeah.
I also love that in this moment, I'm now second guessing myself. I literally just saw the clip the other day. She was being interviewed on Graham Norton about it. Now I'm like, was it actually Jodie Foster? I'm so sure it was. Now I'm like, fuck, was it Helen Hunt? Why would it be Helen
Well,
Hunt,
here's the
Chrissy?
thing. Nobody fact checks themselves, and we spend all of our times fact checking our information we bring on this show. So let's just say it.
You know,
I said
I think you're right. The opening bit should be for just any claims we want to make
wild
with
statements. I said last night I said last night that I believe squirrels hibernate. They don't. And then I was like, what would happen if I just started saying it? And then it's like, when is this coming up in conversation?
I promise you that the next time we are in the same room with a room of people, I will casually mention squirrels to you so that you have a reason to drop the untrue knowledge.
Thank you.
I like that. The thing is, if you say it confidently enough,
Yeah.
no one's questioning you on it.
No. No. Hell no.
And who wants to get into a fight with Squirrel Girl? Nobody. Yes, someone who's that passionate about squirrels, no one's gonna fight her. So
No.
yeah, I think you're safe.
Thanks.
What do they do all winter? They get
They
like
appar-
winter?
well, I had to look it up. And here's the thing. Because we know that they collect nuts. They store nuts for winter.
Of course.
And the point I was making was, what if that's a myth? That was the point I was making. I was like, what if they're not storing nuts for winter, blah, 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 whatever.
Sure.
Well, turns out they do. Um, but apparently they really like hunker down. They stay close to home and they spend a lot of time in their nest with their, pile of nuts. And to that I say,
What a
not the
dream.
worst life. Yeah.
I will absolutely spend 6 months gathering food to then not leave my house for 6 months and gorge myself. That sounds like a delight. There are a lot of
Doing
microwave grilled cheese
yeah.
in my
They're doing
future.
some things right, you know what I mean? I wonder if the squirrel equivalent of microwaving a grilled cheese is just, like, putting a nut between its thighs for, like, 20 minutes, and then it's like, "Ooh, it's hot." It's like trying to melt butter on a plane, you know what I mean?
Yeah, look, when my husband and I first started dating, I was super, super into the Airheads candy,
Right.
but we would often get them, from, like, a convenience store, and they'd be, like, rock solid, and without even thinking about it, at one point, I was just like, "Oh, don't worry, I'll thigh that for you," and I would stick it either between the thighs or stick it under a thigh in the car, between my thigh and the car seat, and it was just he was like, "You're gonna what?" I'm like, "I'll just thigh it. It'll be fine. Just give me a sec." And within, like, a minute, that bitch was smooth and silky and, like, the soft you want it to be.
Well, let's remember we are 98.6 degrees on the inside. We're
That
warm.
that's a great point.
We're warm, so that doesn't surprise me. And to be clear, the only time I remember softening butter on a flight was a million years ago. I think it was my first flight actually, which was out to see you. And this is back in the
Sure.
day where even in coach, you had a full meal. You know what I mean? It was like
Oh, sure.
it was decadent.
The
It felt like
whole
it was
plane.
multiple courses. And I remember the butter being cold and hard. And someone in our party, I don't know, maybe one of our aunts, I don't remember, was like, "Oh, put it in your armpit." Yeah.
As someone who just admitted to shoving, um, uh, candy, and thawing it to make it softer. Armpit, huh?
Yeah, I like that that's your line. I also have to say that
Yeah.
they served everything in these, like, little tiny, like, plastic bowls. I remember
Yeah.
vividly that there was a dessert, maybe it was like a tiramisu, and there was a little piece of marzipan stuck in that said, like, Air Canada on it or
Of
something. This
course.
I'm dating myself, by the way. This was the '90s, okay? This
Back
was a
when they
long time
cared.
ago.
I've
Back
said
when
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember I'd never had marzipan before, and I loved it. I was like, "Oh, this is" because it's kinda like white chocolate, but nutty, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyway, so we get through the meal, and then our grandfather, as the flight attendants are coming to as the flight attendants are coming to, like, clear all the trays, our grandfather was like, "Can I keep these bowls?" And they said in their defense, they said, "Sure." So we had a random set of these teeny tiny little, like, 4 by 4 kinda square bowls for the rest of his life.
Did he use them?
I think so.
Did
And
we
that might have
bury
just been a
him with
point of
them?
pride at that point, it was like I went through the trouble of because think about the journey that those bowls would have had to take. What's he putting them in? Grandma's gonna have to put them in her goddamn purse. She doesn't want them. They're dirty and used. I can already feel her being like, "Oh, why? Okay." Like,
Mhm.
this was on the way to see you guys. So that's the other thing is that it was like, then they're just like, "What? Did she ask your mom to, like to, like, wash them?
Oh.
Could you give these a run through the dishwasher?" Anyway, then I guess maybe they're packed in the packed luggage on the way back? I don't know.
Oh, and, like, it wouldn't be just, like, come out for a day. It was out for, like, at least 2 weeks, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Any food remnants still on that bowl.
Residue. Yeah.
I
Well,
just
it's
like that he was so tickled by those
yep,
bowls, he was like, "I'm gonna ask if I can keep them."
yep, and he did, and he did. Listen, on that note, we gotta get into this. What you drinking over there? Anything fun?
I, ran out of time. today, which is wild because you gave me extra time, but yet
I always do.
I
That's my own
fuddled it
fault.
away as I'm wont to do.
Fuddled
So
it.
yeah, so I've just got I've got a folk and a water is what I'm doing. But she's back on straws, bitches. Couldn't be.
Nice.
Hmm.
Very nice. Yeah, as I mentioned before, I'm on the white wine and it's been a minute since I've drank anything. So
Hmm.
buckle in, dear listeners. Who knows where this is going to
Wait.
go? I already feel loose and buzzy. You're all in for a treat. This episode, we're talking about Michelle Rivera Nyce. I don't know anything about this case. Could not be more excited. So let's get into it with a brief background right now. In January 2004, Michelle Rivera Nyce, a 34-year-old wife and mother, was found dead in her vehicle at the bottom of an embankment. Police were immediately able to tell that the scene had been staged, as Michelle's injuries were inconsistent with that of a car accident. So, what happened to Michelle Rivera Nyce? How did she end up brutally beaten in the front seat of her car? Was the killer Michelle's controlling and manipulative husband who couldn't handle Michelle becoming the breadwinner of the family? Or was the killer Michelle's secret lover who lied about his real name due to an outstanding warrant for his arrest? Find out the answers to these questions and more as Christy Oxborrow investigates.
I can't even begin to tell you how I found out about this case.
I love it. I'm
It just
already riveted.
happens. It just happens, you know?
Yeah.
And look, the only disclaimer that I have to give off the top is that this episode will contain a very brief mention of animal cruelty. I will not belabor it. I will not uh, go into like crazy descriptions. So we're just going to like hit it and move on.
Yep.
But trigger warning for those who need it. So multiple places online gave me multiple different ways to pronounce this. So I apologize in advance for most likely pronouncing this incorrectly. Um, but the internet tells me it is Mekali Rivera was born November 18th, 1969, in a small village in the Philippines. She was the fourth of seven children. Later in life, she would choose to go by Michelle, which was like the Americanized version of her name. So, to avoid any confusion, I'll just refer to her as Michelle for the rest of the episode. When she was 16, Michelle moved to Quezon City to attend the National College of Business Administration, where she was an honors student. Unfortunately, she had to drop out after just one semester due to her family's financial situation. So Michelle went to live with her aunt in, oh boy, oh boy. Uh, I have it written out phonetically, and that's still not helping me. Olongapo? Ulangapo City. I pray that that's close. Where Michelle got a job in a dress store, which allowed her to work on her English. When she was 18, Michelle joined a pen pal agency, which was actually more like a mail order bride sort of situation. But since that tends to have negative connotations attached to it, many people who use the service think of it just as pen pals. In the summer of 1989, Michelle received a letter from an American man named Jonathan Nyce, who had seen Michelle's ad in the Lonely Hearts section of the Manila Times. Jonathan described himself as a successful scientific professor, 29 years old, and living in North Carolina. With the letter, he included a photo of himself. Jonathan and Michelle then started writing letters and postcards back and forth, even shared a few phone calls. In May 1990, Jonathan told Michelle he'd purchased a plane ticket and he was coming to the Philippines in June to marry her. So that's a way to propose. Um, Accompanied by her father, Michelle met Jonathan at the airport in Manila, where Jonathan claimed that Michelle was the one who proposed to him. I could not confirm who proposed to who, but
Right.
I'm more likely to believe Jonathan was the one who proposed, mainly because he looked a lot different from the photo that he had sent Michelle.
Oh,
And
interesting.
that's probably because Jonathan, who had given Michelle a photo from his mid-20s, was actually 39 when he sent it.
Here we go.
He told Michelle at the time they were meeting that he was like 31, 32. So there's that.
Wow.
Lying about your age to lure in a young woman feels wrong in a lot of ways. Because again, I remind you, she was 18 when she first started
Oof.
putting her ads out.
And also,
So,
this is important to remember, like, this is pre-internet, right? Like, this
oh,
is
yeah.
well, not pre-internet, but in the sense that it's not like now where you can kinda catch somebody in this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Again, she
much
couldn't do
easier.
like a quick look up to see who is this guy, anything about him. She just had to trust that what he said was accurate. And it
Right.
was not. So, who was this snake oil salesman, as I've
Mm.
chosen to call him for whatever reason? Well, Jonathan Wesley Nyce was born May 26th, 1950, in Lansdale, Pennsylvania. He was the first of four boys born to Jonathan and Emma Nyce. His father served in the Navy during World War II and later ran a hosiery mill. As an adult, Jonathan bragged that his father had invented the first machine to make pantyhose. However,
Okay.
uh, since his father did not have the financial resources to capitalize on the idea, someone else took that idea and ran with it. Um, and you said that they didn't have the internet then. We certainly have it now because a quick Google search tells me a machine um, that could make pantyhose was patented in Pennsylvania in 1831.
Oh, boy.
Jonathan's father was born in 1925. I'm not great at math. I've already pointed that out in this episode. But I'm going to safely assume that his father was not the machine's inventor. But
No.
that, of course, was not the only lie that Jonathan was ever caught telling. I'm going to touch on his lies throughout the episode because there's a chunk of them. So, as a child, Jonathan was described as a loner who had difficulty adjusting socially. He suffered from acute asthma, which often kept him indoors, and he was nearly 6 feet tall by the time he was 12, which
Oh,
made
wow.
him incredibly insecure. He was also described as quiet and reserved. However, Jonathan had a big imagination and he enjoyed writing stories and poetry. He also loved doing experiments and dreamed of becoming a doctor. What kind of experiments?
Oh, no.
Nothing very upsetting. Let me just check my notes. It says, according to his father, when Jonathan was 17, oh, good, it's a direct quote. He, quote, had a raccoon in a pot on the stove in Clorox. He decided he'd cook it and take the meat off because he wanted to see its skeleton.
Oh, I'm already building a profile.
17 years old.
That's yep.
Yep.
Yep. Great.
When his mother Emma was asked about that totally normal experiment, she said, quote, that was nothing out of the ordinary. He was just learning. Just learning. Go to a fucking museum or read a book, Jonathan. Boiling an animal on the stove just so you can see its bones is anything but normal. It's what we call in the biz a red flag. And it's unsettling that you chose to ignore it and pass the behavior off as normal.
Yep.
That will not be the last thing that his mother does that pisses me off. But anyhow, shockingly, Jonathan was said to be an awkward teen.
What a shock, yeah.
Yeah. He and a friend co founded a group called Methacton Explorers, which was an offshoot of the Boy Scouts. Methacton was the school district that Jonathan attended at the time. So, this explorers group focused on criminology, and they would meet twice a month to study files that they were given by a local police department. What do you got to do to get that? Like, you literally just go up to them and say, "I'd like some of your files," because
Yeah, we've been begging for this for years.
years. They can check the dates way back in the day. We've been screaming about it since season 1.
Yeah.
Just, like, what kind of files were they giving these children? You know what? It was a different time. The point is, The group also attended seminars and occasionally went on ride alongs with the police. In 1968, Jonathan went to Temple University in Philadelphia. And I can't say Philadelphia without randomly shouting out my much beloved Philadelphia Flyers. It is what it is. We're just going to move on quickly. So, Jonathan put himself through school, working part time, and after 8 years, he graduated with his undergraduate Bachelor of Science degree. Jonathan then concentrated his studies on medical research. In 1970, Jonathan started dating a Jewish woman named Sylvia. He proposed early on, and the couple married very quickly. However, their differing faiths caused a lot of friction within their marriage. And if I'm being honest, it seemed like his mother really got her nose in there
Oh.
and was bothered by a lot of it. But Jonathan and Sylvia divorced after 7 years. Jonathan earned a master's degree in molecular biology in 1978, and 5 years later, he received a PhD in biology from Fels Research Institute at Temple University's School of Medicine. He did his postgraduate work at the Children's Hospital in Los Angeles before joining the Kenneth Norris Cancer Center. During his time in California, Jonathan briefly dated a single mother named Linda. However, Jonathan wanted more children. Linda did not. So the relationship just was not meant to be. In the summer of 1987, Jonathan returned to the East Coast after accepting a job as an assistant professor at East Carolina University in Greenville, North Carolina. The following year, he was promoted to full professor while also refining a cancer drug that he had developed while living in California.
Hmm.
In June 1988, Jonathan received a $400,000 grant for cancer research. So, professionally speaking, things were going very well for Jonathan. Personally speaking, Jonathan was disappointed. He was close to 40 years old. He had absolutely no prospects in sight. So, when he spotted a beautiful woman at a hospital cafeteria, Jonathan asked her out. The woman, who was engaged to someone else at the time, turned him down. When they ran into each other again weeks later, the woman showed Jonathan the Lonely Hearts portion of the Manila Times, and that's when Jonathan first spotted Michelle's ad. Jonathan and Michelle exchanged letters for about 10 months before Jonathan wrote to say he was flying to the Philippines and they were going to get married, which sounds to me like he kind of proposed. So it's wild that he's like, well,
Yeah.
she proposed. Either way, he's a liar. But Jonathan later said, quote, "The reason I was able to go was I had to attend a joint meeting of the American and Japanese Cancer Societies that was being held in Hawaii, and afterwards I was invited to give a lecture at the National Cancer Center in Tokyo." And really, the Philippines was just in between. How romantic.
Okay, dude. Like, what does it
Fuck
matter?
off, right?
Yeah.
I just love that he can't just be like, "I made this trip to her because I was
Right.
interested in meeting her." It was just like I basically just jumped out of the plane halfway there anyway. Like, he just makes it seem like it's no big deal. But, again, just a fucking creep. Anyhow, 1 week after officially meeting in person, Jonathan and Michelle were married on June 11th, 1990. Michelle was 20 at the time. Jonathan claimed to be 32. Um, but he had altered his birth certificate to claim he was born in 1958 as opposed to 1950, which was the truth. The document was closely examined, or if it had been closely examined, people would have noticed that he literally just put white out over the 0 and then used a typewriter to type an 8 over top, but you could very clearly see, the 0 underneath. It was so poorly done, you could absolutely see the correct year, underneath, but that seemed to be fine. So at the time of the wedding, Michelle was 20, Jonathan was actually 40, but Michelle believed that Jonathan was 32. So, due to immigration, when Jonathan returned to the United States, Michelle couldn't go with him right away. So, he set up a bank account for her and they waited for her visa application to go through. When Jonathan returned home, he didn't tell his friends or his family that he got married. He didn't even mention that he made a trip to the Philippines at all.
Wow.
In fact, he just didn't bother telling them about Michelle. Didn't
Really?
mention her name, which is weird. But by March 1991, he still hadn't told them. But at that point, he had sent Michelle a letter saying that his family was absolutely dying to meet her. Yeah. Thing is, Jonathan was embarrassed about how he met his wife. And since the area where Michelle worked was known for prostitution, Jonathan was worried people would just assume that Michelle was a sex worker, which I will be
Wow.
clear, she was not. So he came up with an elaborate story about how they met, claiming that they met in Hawaii. Michelle was supposedly there on vacation with a cousin while Jonathan was there for that medical conference. Jonathan claimed after the conference ended for the day, he went to do some surfing, but he ended up tripping over Michelle's foot on the beach. He claimed it was love at first sight. And sure, it's possible for a beautiful 19-year-old girl to fall instantly in love with an awkward 40-year-old man, but I'm surprised how many people in his life believed that immediately.
Yeah.
Michelle's visa was officially granted, and she flew to the United States in April 1991. When Jonathan introduced her to his parents, it was the first time his parents learned that she existed and that he'd gotten married.
Wowzer.
Michelle settled in North Carolina, and the couple welcomed a son, Alex, in January 1992, and another son, Trevor, in November 1993. By then, Jonathan was spending so much time at work that Michelle started to feel lonely, so she joined a gym and ended up making a group of very close friends. In early 1995, Jonathan took a leave of absence from the university to focus on his research full time. He started a company called Epigenesis Pharmaceuticals and started using the prefix doctor. Even though his doctorate was in biology, he did not have an MD. Not that his family cared, because they all referred to him as doctor. His parents even listed Jonathan as a doctor in their in their obituaries in 2018 and 2021, respectively. So in March 1998, Michelle and Jonathan welcomed a daughter, Samantha. From the outside, the family seemed to have it all. Then, 6 months after their third child was born, Jonathan decided to move his company to a larger facility in New Jersey. Michelle was devastated to leave her friends and the community that she had grown to love. It's also sad that Jonathan didn't even bother to consult his wife before making a life altering decision that would affect his entire family. For the first few years, the family lived in a small rental, but in early 2000, they bought a massive house on Keithwood Court in Titusville, Hopewell Township. The house, which featured 5,600 square feet and 21 rooms, cost about $880,000, which in 2024 is closer to about 1.5 million. But Jonathan wasn't concerned about the cost. His company, Epigenesis Pharmaceuticals, had just signed a $100 million deal with one of the biggest over the counter drug companies in Japan. What could possibly go wrong? Around this same time, Michelle flew home to visit her family for the first time since she arrived in America 9 years prior. She hoped to bring her children with her, but Jonathan refused, saying he feared the children would be kidnapped. Yep.
Well,
So,
that's
so he hid the children's passports and told Michelle to go on her own. Once
that's so
Michelle,
sad. This poor woman, like she wanted to show her children where she's from, her culture, all of those things. Like
yeah,
it's
oh,
not like she's not
100%.
from there. Like, you know what I mean? It's not like it was like that's really sad.
You're also not sending the children on their own.
Right.
Like, they will be in her care the entire time, and then they'll be with her and her family, their family that they would get to meet, but, you
Yeah.
know. So once Michelle returned from her trip, she started sending her family large sums of money. She helped them build 6 houses and a playground, as well as put some of her siblings through school. Jonathan always claimed he was the one who did those things, um, but the only thing he chose to do on his own was send them 536 US dollars one time, and that was it.
Okay.
But as I mentioned before, Jonathan was a compulsive liar, and he was willing to say anything to make himself look good. Like how he made up the story about how he met Michelle to try and show how desirable he was, or how he told people he gave so much money to support Michelle's family to show what a caring, selfless person he was. But Michelle was the one that organized and sent the money to her family, which leads me to a quick Jonathan's a fucking liar side note. She is who she is. So, yes, Michelle sent money to her family. Technically, Michelle wasn't working at the time, so it was money that Jonathan had given her, but he had no idea what was done with it. And he would later publicly claim he had personally sent her family money, and he was the one who like built the school and the playground and the houses for the family. Um, just, because he's such a good guy. Jonathan also publicly stated that Michelle's family were so poor when he met them that one of their youngest children had actually died from starvation. No, they didn't. They
Oh
absolutely did not.
boy.
Um, but to this lie, I ask Jonathan, if Michelle and her family were so poor when you first met her, how did she afford a trip to Hawaii? You know, in that fancy little vacation where she supposedly fell in love with you.
Great point.
Hmm. Anyway, back to Jonathan's other lies. Like how he claimed to have developed a revolutionary asthma drug that he said would work without fail. And he talked it up so hard, including stating it had passed rigorous early trials. So a foreign country made a deal worth $100 million. And then it turned out the drug didn't work the way he claimed it would. Yeah. Within the first 7 years of their existence, Epigenesis Pharmaceuticals burned through their initial $40 million venture capital. And by the spring of 2002, they had to do massive layoffs. And things just went from bad to worse when Jonathan just couldn't produce the miracle drug that he had been talking up for years. Jonathan was forced out of the company in 2003. So Michelle took a job at Chanel Cosmetics counter at Macy's in the Quaker Bridge Mall. If you ask Jonathan, the only reason Michelle took the job was because she was planning to create and sell her own line of perfume. It's just like he was embarrassed or he felt the job was beneath them, so he had to come up with some sort of lie to make it seem better. Michelle ended up loving the job and was fairly good at it, likely because she was a people person and she did well when she was surrounded by other people and not suffocated by a controlling creep of a husband.
Yeah.
Allegedly. For example, Michelle decided she wanted to branch out and meet new people. So she wanted to start going to the gym like she had when she got to North Carolina. Um, but Jonathan was so concerned about his wife being in a potential building where there might be, dare I say it, men. Um, so he refused to let her go, and instead he paid thousands of dollars to put a full gym in their home. It wasn't specifically about the gym. Sometimes it's about like getting out of your house or, interacting with other people, especially as a stay-at-home parent. It's like that's like a lifeline for them
Of
sometimes.
course.
So, I mean, my God, piece of shit. It's just I know what's coming.
Of
So it's
course.
the problem with the episodes where I know how much I'm gonna hate him later, so I'm already hating him now. Yeah. At one point, you're going to be like, I couldn't hate this man more. And then at another point, you're going to say to me, this is the worst human being I've ever heard of. And
I
I'm going to
can't
go,
wait.
I know. And I know exactly the point is going to happen, and I can't wait for it. So if you think him not allowing her to go to the gym and instead was like, here, I built you a gym. If you thought that was a bad sign for the couple, in May 2001, Jonathan's mother started talking to Michelle about plans for Jonathan's upcoming birthday. Michelle commented about it being Jonathan's 43rd birthday, but his mother was quick to point out, well, no, he's actually turning 51. And that
Oof.
was the moment after 3 children and 11 years of marriage when Michelle learned that Jonathan had actually been lying about his age the entire time. And while lying about your age may not seem like a big deal, I'll remind you when Jonathan first responded to Michelle's Lonely Hearts ad, she was 19, he was 40. No, thank you, sir. If their age ends in teen, leave them be. And honestly, if Michelle knew the truth, would she have continued to correspond with him? Who knows? But he also added to the lie by sending a younger photo of himself. It's almost like he knew that a 19-year-old wouldn't be interested if she knew he was actually 40.
And also to go through an entire life with someone for many, many years at this point, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's sick. I can't imagine what that would feel like. Like, what a gut punch, you
Right?
know? It's like they got married when he was 40. Now he's turning so 11, 12-ish
11
years
years.
in, you
Yeah.
find out he lied the whole time. That's again, that's just such a like, I'm sure she immediately was like, who is this person? How can I trust them? Because it would be one thing if, like, whatever, they meet up in person for the first time and then he goes, hey, FYI, I'm not actually that age. I
Sure.
lied because I didn't think you'd be interested in me and I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like, that's one thing. Even 6 months in, that's one thing. But keeping it going every year, celebrating your
Mhm.
birthday, and she's getting you a card with the wrong number on it, that's sick.
It's wild. It is
Yeah.
absolutely wild to me, especially, and I feel like it makes it worse because it's not like he finally came clean because he was guilty.
Nope.
She only found out because she happened to have a conversation with his mother.
And what do you bet that it was one of these things where when he was turning 50, his mom was like, we've got to do something big. And he was like, no, 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 no. I don't want anything. I don't want any fanfare.
Yep,
Right. So then
I'll
for his
bet.
51st, I bet mom was like, well, we'll do something nice because we didn't do anything for his 50th last year. I bet you $1 million that was what it was.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, that's just, listen, again, building
I
a profile.
couldn't be happier about that. So at this point, Michelle is lonely. She's missing her friends from North Carolina. She's finding out that her husband is a lying creep. So in the fall of 2001, just months after discovering the truth about Jonathan's lie, Michelle decides to get landscaping done outside their home. She ordered $50,000 worth of trees from the Ostrich Nursery, who sent a crew of 5 men to plant the trees. One of the men was a 31-year-old who went by the name Enyo. The following summer, Michelle ordered more trees for her front garden, and Enyo was one of the men once again who was sent to her home. This time, Michelle struck up a conversation with Enyo. She asked for his number, saying she was looking to make new friends. And for the first 6 months, they spent hours just talking on the phone. And I think she just wanted a lifeline,
Mm-hmm.
a lifeline out of that house. Unfortunately for Michelle, Enyo was not who he claimed to be. He told Michelle his real name was Alexander Castaneda and he was from Guatemala. Truth is, his real name was Miguel de Jesus and he was from Puerto Rico. Turns out that Enyo had at least 3 different aliases that he used, including Sergio Martinez, and at least 3 different social security numbers that he used. There was a warrant out for Enyo's arrest for non payment of child support. So, to avoid police, he would use his other aliases. And
Woof.
while I am not suggesting that an affair emotional or otherwise, is okay. I find it sad that without realizing it, Michelle got close with another man who was also lying to her about who he really was.
Yeah.
And I'll say it, she deserved better.
Yes.
So, for the first few months of their relationship, Ennio claims things were strictly platonic. It started with long phone calls, it turned into meeting for lunch or for a drink after work, and about months in, they were just having a full blown affair, meeting at a motel once a week. Ennio asked why Michelle didn't just leave her husband, and she said she couldn't afford a lawyer and she was worried about her children. Then Ennio started asking questions about Jonathan's financial situation, and at one point, he outright asked Michelle to loan him $3,000. Ennio claimed he wanted to buy his family a house in Guatemala. Again, he's from Puerto Rico. So Michelle turned him down. However, she would often give Ennio expensive gifts, such as a watch and a coat. In February 2003, Michelle took another trip to see her family in the Philippines. Before she went, she gave Enyo $1,000 from the traveler's checks that Jonathan had given her. A week into the trip, Jonathan joined her. But even with Jonathan there, again, he refused to let the children go with them. According to Michelle's family, throughout the trip, Jonathan drank heavily and fought with Michelle constantly. Jonathan allegedly told them that without him, their family would starve. Which beautiful reunion.
Wonderful.
So shortly after this trip that Jonathan was fired, because he couldn't produce the drug that he claimed he'd already produced. Or just to put it nicer, the company went through some restructuring. Jonathan was given 2 years full pay and benefits as a severance. He then decided to go back to his childhood passion of writing and write a book of poetry called Poems for Children and the Parents Who Love Them. He hoped it would be the first in a series based on the one poem of his that I read. I'm glad it wasn't. So, with all this extra time on his hands, Jonathan started getting suspicious of Michelle's comings and goings. So, he went through her phone and did a reverse search for the number and discovered that Michelle was having an affair with a man named Alexander Castaneda, who we, of course, know as Enyo. Jonathan then claimed in July 2003 a man called him and played an audio tape of Michelle having sex with another man. The caller then demanded $500,000. Jonathan confronted Michelle. She lied and said she'd taken a job as a side job as on a phone sex line. Then she claimed she only slept with someone else twice and she was drunk both times. And then she just finally admitted that yes, she had been having an affair. Michelle called Enyo to say it was over. Jonathan called him to say, quote, "If you put your hands on my wife, you're going to be a dead man." Enyo then reconciled with his own wife, who he was on and off with throughout the affair. Jonathan went back to his first love and expressed his feelings through the art of poetry. If I may share a brief poem with you
Please.
that he wrote to his wife. Your stainless steel heart, like a knife, rips open my soul to bleed unattended, dying, with another man's semen still warm within your belly. You call me on the telephone and tell me not to worry. When, oh, when will my dying end? I hope I did it some justice, but yeah,
It was a beautiful stage reading. I
thank you
think
so much.
another man's semen
Yep.
was what
Mm,
got me. I didn't see coming. And then also saying
pun
in your
intended, I hope.
thank you very it wasn't, but thank you. Also saying it's hard for me to even repeat in her
Mhm.
belly. I'm like,
Yeah.
it's
Like, not to be that person, but, like, so he's just like, is he implying a blowjob, or is he just proving that he's not a real doctor?
Honestly, the exact thought came into my mind. I was like, what is he meaning specifically about that? It doesn't matter, obviously, but it just was it was a real kind of visual he was creating there, which
Yeah.
is fascinating. Well, listen, on that note, everybody take a quick break. Hit the can, grab another drink, maybe write a quick poem, like a haiku of your own. And we'll be right back with more on the Michelle Rivera Nyce episode of True Crime and Cocktails. Clap two on three. One, two, three. Welcome back to this episode of True Crime and Cocktails. We're, of course, discussing the Michelle Rivera Nyce case. Before the break, Christy was dazzling us with some of Jonathan Nyce's very specific poetry. What's next?
Yeah. Yeah, what I liked about the poetry, I mean, was nothing, but what I liked about it, um, was it wasn't that fancy pants poetry that makes you, like,
No.
think to, like, come up with things, like, "What does this mean? What could it all mean?" It is very blunt and tells
Yeah,
it like it is.
very
Um,
matter of fact.
yeah, so, I mean, I guess he has that going for him.
Yeah.
Ugh, still terrifying creep. Anyhow, so Jonathan claims that Enyo called him and played audio tapes of his affair with Michelle, and that Enyo was asking for $500,000. On July 23rd, Jonathan went to the FBI to tell them that Enyo was extorting him. The fact that he went above the police and just decided this was a matter for the FBI is amazing to me. I guess TV and movies have always made me feel like the FBI is unreachable to the common folk, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
So, Jonathan tells the FBI he's being extorted. He claims that on July 10th, he received two short phone calls. The first played a portion of this alleged sex tape, the second demanded $500,000. Jonathan even brought in his cell phone bill to show the two phone calls on it. Since this all happened out of the FBI's jurisdiction, the case was given to Hopewell Township Police Department. Detective Daniel McKeon said that within minutes of receiving the case, he got a phone call from Jonathan, who invited the detective to his home to interview him and his wife. When McKeon looked into it, he discovered the two phone calls came from a payphone at a Shell gas station. But Enyo's car was not seen on any security cameras near the gas station that day. Also, McKeon pointed out it was super weird for a person to make two phone calls so quickly, demanding money, and then just like not contact them for 2 weeks. Like, didn't give them a timeline, just was like, I want $500,000. And then that's it. Like, just never
Right.
hears from them again. That's weird. Um, but speaking of that time frame, if Jonathan was genuinely concerned about the phone calls on July 10th, why'd he wait until July 23rd to talk to the police?
Great question.
None of it made any sense. But Jonathan made sure to call Detective McKeon and update him constantly. He faxed him things that anything he thought was relevant. On August 19th, nearly a month after first going to the police, Jonathan sent McKeon a fax that was labeled urgent. The fax, the very urgent information, quote, my wife stated to you that Enyo encouraged her to kill me. When she told him he was crazy for suggesting that, he said he would do something to himself, although he wouldn't tell her what for fear of frightening her. Go back to your poems.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
stop it. The fax also claimed that a truck parked outside their house the night before and watched Michelle. And when Jonathan tried to get a license plate number, the vehicle took off. McKeon called Jonathan, who admitted he didn't call the police after the incident because he didn't have his cell phone on him at the time. Apparently, you can only call police from your or yeah, you can't call police from your home phone. I don't really know how it works for in Jonathan land. But
Yeah.
McKeon closed the extortion case about an hour later, saying that Jonathan's allegations were unfounded. I just
There we
like that
go.
it's like, "You've wasted my fucking time. Close it." I love it. So investigators are convinced that Jonathan discovered his wife was cheating, so he went to the payphone that Enyo and Michelle would often use, and Jonathan then used it to call his own cell phone 2 times while sitting in the parking lot. And that makes complete sense to me because then it shows up on his cell phone bill, and then he's like, "Look, see, there's the calls from that payphone." It's like, "You made the calls from the payphone, you dummy." Also, if you're gonna extort a man for money, call his home. Like, call his house. Why are
Yeah.
you only calling his cell phone? How'd you get his cell phone number?
Right.
Like, again, Jesus. Anyhow, days after the case was closed, Jonathan and Enyo were both in court over a mutual restraining order, which was meant to legally keep Michelle and Enyo apart for 2 years. If both parties complied, the case would be dismissed, but if either made contact with the other, they could face up to 6 months in jail and fines of up to $500. So I guess that's the end of the affair, right? No. Michelle
No.
and Enyo met up less than a month later in the parking lot of a Pizza Hut. Sometimes specific details aren't worth mentioning, but I liked the idea of Pizza Hut coming up, so there you have it.
Absolutely.
Over the next 3 months, Michelle and Enyo met up 6 or 7 times, although Enyo claimed that some of those times, all they did was talk. In the fall of 2003, Michelle was happy with life. She seemed to like her job at Macy's, and she had made some close friends. Then Jonathan decided the family should move to Pennsylvania to be closer to his parents. So he put the house up for sale. Again, without consulting his wife. Their fighting increased as once again Michelle was finally happy with the way her life was, and her husband decided to uproot her. The fighting got so bad that once Jonathan allegedly punched a hole through their bedroom door. Michelle told a friend that she and Jonathan had been fighting for 5 years and she wanted a divorce, but she couldn't afford an attorney. Michelle also allegedly claimed that she thought Jonathan might have been having an affair himself because she discovered a condom in his suitcase when he returned home from a business trip. So things weren't going well for Michelle and Jonathan, and on top of that, Michelle continued to secretly see Enyo, which makes you wonder if Jonathan knew about it, and that might have been the real reason he wanted to move his family to another state. Just speculating. But the house didn't sell, so in January 2004, the family was still living in New Jersey. On January 15th, Michelle had to work at 6 p.m. Then she said she'd be going out with a friend after. Jonathan spent the evening with the kids. They went out for pizza, arriving home shortly before 7 p.m. By 8, the kids sat with Jonathan in his room while they tried to call Michelle's cell phone on speaker. She didn't answer, probably because she was working. Neither here nor there. The kids then got settled in Jonathan and Michelle's bed, and they watched the movie Bruce Almighty with their father. Apparently, it was a usual thing for the kids to sleep in the master bedroom with Jonathan when Michelle was going to be out late, which feels like an absolute nuisance to have to move 3 children when you get home late. But you do you. So Jonathan said that after the movie, they were all asleep by 10 p.m. He tried calling Michelle again around midnight, but said he didn't get an answer. Meanwhile, Michelle had called Enyo at 5:30 and told him to call her at work around 9. She then headed to Macy's where she clocked in at 6:03 p.m. Enyo called her at 8:30 and they agreed to meet at a nearby Applebee's parking lot, which leads me to a brief, super random Christie side note.
I love it.
I had Applebee's for the first time in my life a month ago. It's not my fault. I've just never lived close enough to one before. But I have to say, those fajitas were life altering, and I am still thinking about them. Again, that was end of January, and here we are. and I'm still dreaming about them. Just the saliva that has happened in my mouth thinking about them. I already have plans to try and, like, recreate it at home. I'm pretty much the only one that will eat any sort of, like, bell pepper, and without a bell pepper, what's the point of a fajita? So,
Well, great call.
basically, I'm gonna wait for a time it's only me, and I'm just gonna make so much and just gorge on homemade fajitas, and I can't wait.
I love
Again,
it.
ask so little in life.
Yeah,
Endless fajitas. That's all I'm asking. So,
I get that.
again, shout out Applebee's. Didn't know what I was missing. So, at 9:15 p.m., Michelle finished her shift and was seen on CCTV cameras walking from Macy's to her Toyota Land Cruiser, which was in the parking lot. She then drove to the Applebee's to meet Enyo. From there, they took Enyo's car to the Mounts Motel, where they got a room under the name Jose Pineda. Enyo later said that he and Michelle had sex, then Michelle had a shower, and he drove her back to her car, dropping her off at 12:30 a.m. The parking lot was about 13 miles from Michelle's house. The following morning, two maintenance workers working on a downed electrical pole spotted a Toyota Land Cruiser parked off the road. At first, they thought it was maybe just a hunter, but when they passed the vehicle again an hour later, they got out to check. The vehicle had gone off the road and down a 15-foot embankment before coming to a stop in a small creek. When the workers looked inside the vehicle, they found the body of a young woman. Police arrived on scene around 8:50 a.m. They immediately noticed a set of I almost said footprints. My youngest has called them footprints for years, and I was very charmed by it. Footprints, like an adult, less cute, but so police immediately notice a set of footprints in the snow that went from the vehicle's passenger side door up the embankment to the road. A plaster cast was taken of the prints, which were determined to be a men's size 12. The vehicle's engine was still on, the driver's side door was open, there was blood on the driver's side running board, as well as the back door, passenger door, and smeared all over the driver's seat. The victim was not wearing any shoes, and the driver's seat was pushed back as far as it could go, despite the fact that the victim was only 5'2". The victim was slumped over with severe wounds to her face and head, which were not consistent with that level of accident. It was quickly determined that the victim was 34-year-old Michelle Rivera Nyce. At 9:13 a.m., police officers arrived at the Nyce family home to notify Jonathan. His children, Trevor and Samantha, answered the door and said they were home alone. They told police their mother started working before they got up and their father was dropping their brother off at school. Now, at the time, the children were 11, 10, and 5. So only the 11-year-old had to go to school? I know America has middle school, and maybe that's where the 11-year-old went. And assuming the youngest was in kindergarten, maybe they didn't go every day or didn't go till the afternoon or something. But why would the 10-year-old be at home? Wouldn't he also have to go to school? I know this is not the thing to focus on, but that's my middle name. I focus on things that seem off that nobody seems to focus on. It's just who I am. So Jonathan gets home. He sees the police waiting and he pulls into the driveway and parks his car. Then, before getting out of the vehicle, he uses the remote in his car to close the large garage door, which was open when police arrived. That feels suspicious. He didn't park in the garage. The garage door was already open. He pulled into the driveway and went, weird, saw the police, closed the garage door, and then went into the house.
Interesting.
So just feels like such an odd thing again. So the police asked about Michelle, and Jonathan said she worked the night before from 6 to 10 and that she was then going out with a friend. He said it wasn't unusual for Michelle to stay out all night. Jonathan then, in front of the children, who again were just 5 and 10 at the time, openly talked about Michelle's affair, how much she changed since Jonathan found out about it. He then told the police that his wife had become psychologically unstable. He called her bipolar and sex mad. Again, in front of their children. And to be clear right away here, no one else in Michelle's life ever said any of those things about her. She was described as sweet, caring, and responsible by literally everybody else who knew her. Jonathan then called his parents to tell them about Michelle's death, and his mother, Emma, said she had a hair appointment at 4 p.m., so they'd come over after that. She finds out her daughter-in-law is dead and still plans to go to her hair appointment later that day. That is easily one of the coldest things I have ever heard. And
Yeah.
honestly, maybe Emma just didn't process emotions like other people. After all, this is the same woman who thought it was perfectly normal for her son to boil a dead raccoon so he could see its bones. I mean, I think she was really just trying to convince herself it was normal so she'd feel better about it. But I'm no expert. So Jonathan eventually went to the police department to give his official statement. He started by claiming he first met Michelle on a beach in Hawaii. So right out the gate, just already lying to police. But again, it was the same story he had told friends and family, and he likely knew his story needed to match everyone else's. So Jonathan said Michelle worked the night before her death, saying, quote, "I got concerned. She's usually home by 1 a.m." Which is weird because when police showed up at your house to tell you, you told them it wasn't unusual for Michelle to be out all night. So which was it?
Yeah.
Jonathan then told the detectives about the extortion scheme and Michelle's affair. When asked about their sex life, Jonathan said, quote, "We had a lot of sex. It was normal." For some reason, I highly doubt both of those statements.
Yeah.
Jonathan also added that while they did have fights, it never got physical. But he said that Michelle did like to throw things at him. Quote, "She always needed something to be angry about." Which sounds like a man who was constantly angering his wife, but making it her fault. She loves being angry about everything. It's like, what? For example, you lying about your age for a decade?
Or moving her as soon as she, like, makes friends and is having a good time.
As soon as she's comfortable. Just controlling piece of shit. So, during Michelle's autopsy, the medical examiner noted 4 separate lacerations to the head, with 1 on the top and 3 on the back. There were contusions on her brain, intracranial bleeding, and defensive wounds on Michelle's hands. The medical examiner stated that the injuries were inconsistent with a car accident, saying it appeared more likely that Michelle had been beaten. He believes that Michelle may have lived up to 10 minutes before choking to death on her own blood.
Oh god.
Her cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma. Following the autopsy findings, the police executed search warrants for the Nyce family home and their vehicles. At the house, they found blood on the door frame between the house and the garage, as well as some on the walls in the garage. The garage floor appeared to have been scrubbed down. There was blood spatter on the floor next to one of the vehicles, as well as an empty bottle of hydrogen peroxide. Also in the garage was a bucket with water which had been frozen and had a white sock that had blood and hair on it. Yep. A baseball bat found in the garage appeared clean but tested positive for blood. Unfortunately, tests were unable to determine if the blood was human or animal. Some of Jonathan's clothing was found in the washing machine, which was still full of water. The water had a pink hue to it, which investigators believed was blood. but tests were unable to confirm that. A garbage bag full of blood soaked paper towels was discovered in a garbage bin outside, and a second bag was found stuffed in the clean out door of the fireplace, which is basically just a small cast iron door that makes it easier to clean out a fireplace or a chimney. The blood on the paper towels was a match to Michelle. During the search, police also found that awkward poem that Jonathan had written about Michelle, the one I read before the break that mentions semen in her belly. They found Jonathan's birth certificate and the marriage certificate, both of which, wouldn't you know, they noticed had been altered to say he was born in 1958 and not 1950. There was also a pair of men's size 12 moccasins or slippers, which had a weird white substance on the bottom. The substance turned out to be 4 different kinds of glue, as the slippers had a second sole glued to them, which had been removed. With all this evidence collected, investigators interviewed Jonathan again. He outright said, quote, "I did not kill my wife." When one of the detectives asked Jonathan to define the word kill, Jonathan said, quote, "To shoot, stab, or choke someone." I'll remind you, the medical examiner stated that it looked as though Michelle had been beaten. And by leaving that out of his definition of killing, it's no wonder that he claims he didn't do it. However, even Jonathan realized it was nonsense and he officially confessed. He then asked for some paper so he could, collect his thoughts, you know, as an author.
Oh boy.
The first thing he wrote down, and this is a direct quote, "I wish you were dead." Were you writing that about yourself? Or is this
Whose point of
you?
view is this being written from?
Right? Oh, so many questions. So many questions. Then he just wrote a random list that seemed to be like a timeline of his life written in point form. For example, and these were all things he wrote like in like a column or like a list. Um, Long disappointment, home, school, beautiful marriage for 10 years, 3 beautiful children, North Carolina to New Jersey. I can show you what I can be, marriage vow. So it's almost like he tried to write a very terrible poem in front of the police, which is, I'll say it, not the time. Jonathan continued to claim the ruse of meeting Michelle on a beach in Hawaii, but he said that in the past few years, Michelle had become psychologically undone. He said, quote, "I felt she was in sickness and I was going to stand by her." He added, quote, "I want my kids to have good feelings about their mother no matter what," which doesn't explain why he went into graphic detail to the police about Michelle's affair in front of the children the first time the police came to the house. He also said, I have not a bad thought in my heart about her." Again, I refer you to the semen poem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jonathan then told the police about the bag of bloody paper towel hidden in the chimney fireplace, which of course the police had already found. He also admitted that the glue on the bottom of the slippers was because he had added a new sole to them shortly after being fired from restructuring, whatever we're calling it. He's a dick. He was fired. Let's say what it is. Jonathan seemingly got bored. At first, he tried, writing poetry. Then he got super into using power tools. He refinished some furniture. And then, for whatever reason, he used a saw to remove the sole from a pair of boots and then glued them to the bottom of his slippers. I can only assume he wanted to wear the slippers outside. They needed a better tread for winter or something. I don't know. Nothing else makes sense to me. So after the police went to the house to notify him of Michelle's death, Jonathan took those slippers downstairs, removed the extra sole, and used his scroll saw to cut the sole into 14 different pieces. He then went around his house hiding the pieces in random spots, including in a box of Christmas lights and, in his children's toy box. Investigators found the pieces and determined that they had the same four kinds of glue that the slippers did. Oh, and when the pieces were all found and put together like a puzzle, they were nearly an exact match to the footprint found outside the car at the crime scene. And while he outright admitted to this Frankenstein footwear, he then claimed he didn't wear them the night of Michelle's death, claiming that he was pretty sure he'd had other shoes on. When investigators asked if the slippers were still in the house, he said, quote, "I didn't take anything off and discard it. I don't remember. I was in a terrible state. You used a scroll saw to try and discard evidence, you dumb
Yeah.
fuck." If I may.
You may.
Because I'm over
You
him.
absolutely may.
I'm absolutely over him. So, oh, I should have just kept reading my notes. Um, Sir, you've already admitted to destroying evidence and sprinkling it around your home like evidence confetti. You can't walk it back now. Walk it back is a fun thing when we're talking about shoes.
I love it.
Anyhow, so Jonathan said he fell asleep with the kids around 10 p.m. and he woke up around midnight. He couldn't remember if he called Michelle again or not. According to phone records, he absolutely did. But he says he went downstairs for a drink of water. Around 2 a.m., their baby Samantha asked for a bottle of milk, so Jonathan went back to the kitchen when he heard the sound of tires crunching on the driveway. Now, every child is different, but was Samantha drinking from a bottle at this point? He referred to her as their baby Samantha. She was 5 years old. Would a 5-year-old be like, I would like a bottle of milk?
Maybe.
It's possible. It just also feels like he was looking for an excuse to be like, I was in the kitchen, not my wife didn't come home and I sat in the kitchen and waited to confront her. Like,
Right.
that's kind of how it seemed to me. So Jonathan says Michelle walks in the door. He saw she was not wearing her work clothes. He was immediately concerned that she was on ecstasy because her eyes were big and she was acting irrationally. He told the investigators that they should be sure to test for drugs in her system. To be clear, a forensic toxicologist stated that while there were traces of caffeine in Michelle's system at the time of her death, there was absolutely no drug or alcohol, including ecstasy. So Jonathan claims they start to argue, and Michelle flew into a rage, while he remained calm and relaxed because he was on Ativan. He then claimed that Michelle pulled something out of her bag, possibly a letter opener or a stiletto heel, and then she lunged for him. He said, quote, "If I hadn't moved, she would have gotten me all the way through. It would have gone through the middle of my throat, and she's very, very strong and fast. She's a physical trainer." I mean, no, she wasn't. She works out, is what you meant. Um, so I'm sure she was strong. I just don't buy that this man, who is 6'4", 240 pounds, was afraid of a woman who was 5'2" and 100 pounds.
Yeah. No.
I just
Nope.
don't. To be clear, no letter opener or stiletto was found at the house.
Interesting.
So he claims she lunged for him and he threw her to the floor. Quote, "She just flew out and hit with a sickening thunk of her head on the concrete floor. I mean, I gave her a good push, but I expected some defensive maneuvering." He said he wasn't trying to hurt her. He just wanted to disarm her. When Jonathan realized his wife was dead, he says he immediately thought of his children. Quote, "How will I explain to them that Mummy tried to kill me? Is there something worse I could say than that Mummy tried to kill me? So I said, it's better I just run her into a tree." Is there something worse than telling your children, Mummy tried to kill Daddy? Yeah, I'd say Mommy is dead. is worse than that, you know, uh,
Yeah.
just off the top of my head. Um, but notice how he made himself the victim. He was calm and relaxed. She was in a rage. She came at him with a weapon. I know none of us were there that night, so only Jonathan truly knows. But I would put good money on the idea that Michelle didn't attack Jonathan at all. Did he have any defensive wounds when the police arrived that morning to interview him? If he had told police about this or simply called the police when it happened, they would have been able to get more evidence to suggest self defense.
Right.
So if Michelle really did attack him, then why did he try so hard to cover up the crime? Using a scroll saw to cut up pieces of the soles of your shoes is an extreme level to hide something. It also shows a very clear thought process that he realized his shoe prints could link him to the scene of that crime. But he told police he was on Ativan that night and pretty out of it. Sir, as someone with extreme anxiety, I have personally taken Ativan multiple times, and I don't think in any of those moments I would have been able to concoct an extreme plan and cover up a murder. I just don't. The best I could have pulled off would have been like putting together some filthy little snack and taking a nap. I wouldn't be able to stay up for hours cleaning blood and disposing of evidence. And hey, maybe the drug just hits Jonathan and I differently. I guess I'm just saying I don't believe him.
Yeah.
I don't. Jonathan was arrested on charges of first-degree murder, and his bail was set at 2 million. Jonathan's lawyer argued, "quote The facts suggest self-defense." Respectfully, sir, no, they don't.
No.
And I say that as a non-lawyer, and I'm okay with
Yeah.
it. Then, during a pretrial hearing, Jonathan spoke out of turn, saying, quote, "I have no history of physical violence ever against anyone. I never, ever had ill will toward my wife. This is what happened. It was a pure accident." Again, 4 massive head wounds that completely fractured her skull doesn't sound like an accident to me. The judge agreed to reduce bail down to 1 million, but denied Jonathan's request to live with his children leading up to the trial. In April 2004, Jonathan Nyce was indicted on 1 count of first degree murder and 1 count of tampering with evidence. So let's look at the prosecution's theory as to what happened on the night that Michelle was murdered. The belief is that Michelle arrived home around 12:45. Jonathan and Michelle got into an argument. Michelle grabbed a suitcase saying she was leaving him. As Michelle collected some of her things, there was a scuffle. A wine glass got broken. Investigators then believe that Michelle got back to her vehicle, but Jonathan yanked her so hard that he left bruises on her left arm. They believe Jonathan then picked up a baseball bat and hit Michelle on the back of the head, fracturing her skull. The couple struggled, and Jonathan slammed Michelle's head into the concrete floor multiple times. According to the investigators, Jonathan then put Michelle's body in the driver's seat of the vehicle, pushed the seat back as far as it would go, and then placed her suitcase in the back seat. Since the suitcase was in the garage during the attack, it was covered in blood. Around 2:15 a.m., Jonathan got into the passenger seat of the vehicle, started the engine, and using a long-handled plastic ice scraper, Jonathan pressed the gas pedal and backed the vehicle out of the garage. Yeah. He drove the vehicle to Todd Ridge Road, where he let the vehicle roll over the 15-foot embankment. The vehicle hit several metal camping chairs and a tree stump at some like abandoned campsite, and then came to a stop at a small frozen creek. Jonathan then fled the scene and started scrubbing the garage floor with paper towel and hydrogen peroxide. He put his pajamas in the washing machine, hid the garbage bags full of paper towel, and got into bed around 6 a.m. The defense argued that Michelle's affair constituted provocation, and she arrived home late. It was the first time Jonathan realized the affair was still ongoing. and that news pushed him over the edge. Um, and so simply because of the idea of her ever having an affair, they really tried to be like, well, it's not his fault that he reacted so poorly. So the jury found Jonathan Nyce not guilty of murder. The judge then ran down the other options, like less aggravated manslaughter and reckless manslaughter. Uh, the jury also found him not guilty of those. In the end, the jury found Jonathan guilty of passion or provocation manslaughter. He was sentenced to 8 years. And less than 2 hours later, Jonathan was sitting in his attorney's office across from the courthouse doing an interview with Dateline,
Gross.
which also feels, I don't know, abnormal. During the
Yeah.
interview, Jonathan said, quote, "I've been torn away from my children who I love with my own heart and love me for something I didn't do. Sir, you confessed and were convicted. The jig is up." He then added, quote, "They know I would never harm their mother." But you did. You're 100% responsible for that woman's death. And then you tried to cover it up. Hardly, I might add. Jonathan was sentenced to 8 years, but he was released in 2010 after serving about 5. A judge granted him early release for good behavior. Jonathan was then reunited with his children because, yes, somehow he still has a relationship with them. I hope the children, while he was in prison and since then, have been cared for and that they haven't been lied to about this situation. I also hope Jonathan thanks his lucky stars that his children chose to have a relationship with him because Lord knows he doesn't deserve it. After his release, Jonathan kept pushing the idea that he was wrongfully accused. Again, my dude, you confessed. And I get that false confessions are a thing, but you even told the police where to find damning evidence against you. But Jonathan claims it wasn't actual evidence because he says his size 12 shoe absolutely didn't fit the size 12 footprint that was found at the scene. He claims Enyo's boots are a closer match. To be clear, Enyo wears a 9.5.
Also, what are you doing, dude? It's over. It's over.
Yeah,
You got away with murder.
yeah,
So what are you doing? Shut up.
yeah.
Right? Like, stop. Maintaining your innocence or whatever. Like you confess to the crime. You did the time. Stop it.
100%.
Gross.
Oh, and because he kept pushing that it was absolutely Enyo who actually killed Michelle, he said, "The truth is, the shoe at the scene was a 9.5. Police just said it was a 12 to railroad him." Mm-hmm. In 2012, Jonathan released a book called Under Color of Law. It is said to be, and I quote, "the true account of an innocent man's nightmare journey through the American criminal justice system." And honestly, for the sake of research, I was going to read the book, but fuck this guy. I wasn't about to pay to support his lies. Lies like claiming Enyo was found with traces of Michelle's blood on his body after her death, which is not true, or his claim that Michelle was found clenching some of Enyo's hair in her hand in the car. Again, not true. While further pushing the idea of Enyo as the real killer, Jonathan also claimed Enyo had been stalking Michelle before her death, a claim police were never able to corroborate. The book's publisher claimed the book, quote, "deserves to be on every American's must read list." That is the hardest of passes I can ever imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan then publicly stated that he planned to go back to his roots, which involved cancer research. In 2012, he started multiple companies with the plan to develop drugs that would treat cancer in dogs. In December 2022, Jonathan was convicted of wire fraud and interstate shipment of misbranded animal drugs. What does that mean? Basically, this absolute piece of shit who absolutely killed his wife convinced dog owners whose pets were dying to pay him hundreds or thousands of dollars for drugs that he claimed would save their dogs' lives.
No.
The drugs turned out to be just random bulk ingredients that Jonathan blended together himself. The company's
Jesus.
the company's promotional materials claimed that their research was partially funded by the FDA. That was a lie. The drugs weren't even approved by the FDA. The company's website also made multiple false claims about the safety and effic- I was doing so great, sounding like an adult. Efficacy. Fuck, you knew what I meant.
Yep.
They lied and said the drugs worked. They didn't. It was discovered that Jonathan sold nearly $1 million worth of those drugs to about 900 victims. He was first charged in February 2020 and then convicted in December 2022. In February 2024, a recent, he was sentenced to 97 months in prison, which for those who don't count prison sentences like fucking baby ages, that means about 8 years, followed by 3 years probation and maybe a fine. And if this isn't proof that Jonathan Nyce is a terrible person, I don't know what is. He can claim he was framed for his wife's death all he wants, but he's going to have a harder time trying to convince us that he didn't purposefully take advantage of pet owners by giving them false hope in exchange for lining his own pockets and making himself feel smart and important. He is absolutely disgusting. I am horrified this man exists, and while I hope he rots in prison, I'll try not to be surprised when he inevitably gets released early for good behavior or simply because he's old. Whatever the excuse, I promise he won't deserve it. Reporting for True Crime and Cocktails, I'm fucking riled up.
Yeah, I'm fired up too. What a journey. Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
listen. Grab another drink, hit the can again. Maybe now an angry haiku. You do you. And we'll be back to wrap it up with our final thoughts on the Michelle Rivera Nyce episode of True Crime and Cocktails. All right, final clap on
Yep.
3. 1, 2, 3. Welcome back to this episode of True Crime and Cocktails. We're, of course, discussing Michelle Rivera Nyce. What a journey. What a ride. This is a real rager.
Yeah.
So many of them are, but this is, yeah, I've got lots of thoughts. You know, right from the top, when you were writing down, or when you were writing down, Jesus, you were telling me I
You're
was
doing
writing it
great.
down.
You're doing
Anyway,
great.
um, him lying about his age,
Oh,
sending that old photo. Again, it's like this would have been this would have been before the internet, right? They would have been talking in what, like the late 90s?
in 1990.
In 1990.
It would have been
Exactly,
like
excuse me.
1989, and then they met
Right.
in
So this
1990.
is pre-internet.
Oh, yeah.
So again, this not that it matters because it's, if you're being deceitful, you're being deceitful, but there is no way to vet this. She really was just trusting that what he was saying was true.
Yeah.
Um, and then of course, I feel like there's this move that some people have who want to do that kind of thing, that it's like, well, when I meet them and I win them over, then they won't care that I look different from my pictures. And, that is true in some cases, but also it's just, again, it feels like he was railroading her into marrying him. It was like, we're corresponding, we're having some phone calls. I'm going to fly there and you're going to marry me. Doesn't really feel like she's even being given the option to say no.
Oh, 100%.
I wrote, this is when I just wrote down, he made up a lie that his father made the first machine to make pantyhose, and I just wrote down pattern of lies. Because again,
Mhm.
we see this a lot. We see this a lot. Again, it's not rocket science when we're talking about building a profile about this kind of man, this kind of person. The lying, the lying with him feels also, like, almost compulsive, like, it feels
Sure.
especially later in life when it's like he's trying to prove his innocence when we all know that he's guilty, he's admitted to the crime,
Right.
he's there's no kind of other story that would make sense for someone else to have done it. He hid evidence, it's like, why would you lie? And there is this, and I don't know a ton about pathological liars, but what I do know is that they feel more comfortable lying. That it feels uncomfortable to them to not be lying. And I'm not giving that
Oh,
diagnosis. I can't. I'm not a doctor. I'm just saying I feel like
neither
there's
is
something.
he.
Neither is he. Exactly. Another lie. Um, but of course, right away, this is giving legit narcissist vibes,
Oh,
legit
yeah.
potential sociopath, psychopath type vibes. Just straight up. That's again, I'm not reinventing the wheel when I say that. The childhood being a loner, the asthma keeping him inside, dreaming of being a doctor. Here's the thing. They talk a lot about how, like, we've talked on this show about this, about how, like, there are tons of psychopaths that fit the psychopath profile that never
Sure.
kill. Politicians quite often are psychopaths. Surgeons, they say, are psychopaths, that they check the boxes. And to be honest, you need to be able to cut into a human, which
Sure.
is something I couldn't do.
No.
I'm gonna guess you couldn't do. Like, there are ways that people with that personality type thrive. And it's like using the whatever you wanna call it, using the power for good, whatever you wanna
Sure.
however you wanna label it. My point being is, I I think there is a world in which, I mean, the boiling of the raccoon to see its bones, that is, again, when we're looking at killers here, statistically speaking, he's checking a lot of boxes,
Oh, yeah.
killing animals, etc. Fascination with seeing what's on the inside. Like, these are things that we hear coming up with often serial killers, but
Right.
certainly people who've just murdered also. I think for me, it's like the curiosity perhaps is not the concern as much as it is the action, right? So it's like,
Sure.
I'm sure there are people who grow up to be doctors, who grow up to be surgeons that perhaps had those similar thoughts at that time, and then perhaps they didn't actually do it, right? To
Mm.
your point, you can go to a museum, you can obviously look things up in books. Now we have the internet. Like, if you really want
Yeah.
to know, there's going to be ways that you don't have to act on it. I know it was a different
Yeah.
time, but still, massive red flag.
Oh, yeah.
Massive. And the fact that his mother was like, "That's not abnormal. He was doing that kind of thing all the time." It's like, well, it's nice to know that you at no point thought that that was something that perhaps you should bring to the attention of, I don't know, a licensed therapist. Just putting that out there. Um, Again, statistically speaking, it's just the numbers don't lie. The kids who've
Oh,
killed animals, it's it's a high number.
the
Anyway,
numbers and Shakira's hips, the
they
things
don't
that don't
lie.
lie.
The two things that don't lie. Uh The fact that he was also embarrassed about how they met, making up this elaborate lie, like, again, it makes me feel like he was just more comfortable lying. Then I wrote down, this is when I wrote down Dr. Death vibes. Shout out once again, Joshua Jackson, your performance in that limited series deserved awards. You were robbed. Anyway, um, but it is giving me those vibes because he lied about his medical credentials. He lied about, you know what I mean? And he was doing
Yeah.
surgeries on humans. Like, it's crazy. The real life person that he was playing, obviously. Um, Now, again, the way he was so controlling of Michelle, moving her at these times, like, look, I think there'd be a culture shock going North Carolina to New Jersey. Like, that's some, they're, not necessarily geographically super far apart, but in some ways very far apart. And I think it's very
Yeah.
difficult as adults to make friends. And the
Sure.
fact that she was, a people person and extrovert, it sounds like that it's heartbreaking to me that it was almost like he delighted in it. It was like,
Oh,
"Oh,
yeah.
let's let her get used to it. Let her get some friends, let her be happy, and then I'm gonna take that away." And it feels to me, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist, but, I dabble. It seems to me the childhood that he had, being alone, being isolated,
Sure.
it feels like he wants to impose that on her. And I don't
Mm.
know, again, if the psychology of that would be, I had to suffer, so I want you to, or I have no concept of anything else, so I don't understand why you would want something else, so therefore, I'm just going to change
Sure.
it. I tend to lean towards that. I think
Sure.
I don't know that he thinks about other people's feelings as much as he thinks about his own. So to me, it's like, I think that he would prefer her to be at home. Um, so he did what he had to do to make that happen. That's again,
Oh,
I'm completely speculating.
I just kind of assumed it was a case of like, um, he realized the moment she got to a point where she needed him less, where it was like she has
Right,
support systems outside the home and all,
right,
and he's like, "No, I don't like that. I want
right,
me to be the only person she relies on."
right. And again, to the point, exactly to that, when she wanted to go to a gym and he was like, I'll spend thousands of dollars building one in the house so you don't have to leave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, fascinating. The revelation of the mom letting it slip about the age.
Mhm.
I mean, it's wild. Then she meets up with Enyo. The fact that she met up with another man lying to her. I know what you're saying. What are the chances? And what I would say is, based on my experience, not that crazy. It can happen. I feel like
Mhm.
it's like sometimes you just got a string of bad luck, and you can go back to
Yeah.
back with them lying.
Yeah.
It's fascinating, actually. Uh, the fact that this man used aliases to avoid paying the child support there was a warrant out for really paints a picture. Um,
Yeah.
that being said, there's also no motive that I can see for him to kill her. You know, the
Yeah.
fact that later Jonathan is trying to argue that it was Enyo, I'm like, show me a motive. There's no
Yeah.
motive for him to kill her. Also, then
Yeah.
how would the car get back home? So what? So you're saying that Enyo followed her back to her home, waited for her to get out of her car, bludgeoned her in the driveway, in the garage? Like, because if there is another location where this happened, well, then provide it. We know
Yep.
that they met at a motel. I'm certain there's evidence that can back up that they were at that motel in the time they were there.
Right.
So if he didn't kill her at the motel, because there's no proof of that there, no evidence. If he didn't kill her in the car, then what? Where's he getting the bat or the object? And where did it happen?
Oh, I
There's a
know.
million places where that just falls apart. And again, this man constructed fake shoes. He put the bottoms of other shoes onto
Mhm.
shoes. And that to me, if I was the prosecution in this case, that's where I would go, this was premeditated. Why
Oh,
are you
sure.
cutting the bottoms of shoes and putting them onto other shoes?
Yeah.
That's not something people do. And then why are you cutting them up and sorry, ripping the soles off, cutting them up, and then hiding it around your house? Also, putting a
Yeah.
piece of those soles in their child's toy box is the most disgusting thing I may have ever heard on this show, and that's saying something. Um,
Yeah.
that's sick. That's beyond to me. That crosses
Oh,
over.
he's a piece of shit.
Yeah, it's disgusting. Um, but you know what I'm saying? It's like that's where I would dig in that it was like, I don't know that I buy that this is manslaughter. Not after they had
No.
not after he had said he was being extorted by Enyo, whether he really believed that to be true or not, I think
Mm.
not. But he's trying to get the FBI involved. He's trying to get the police involved. He, he's creating this story. We know that they were still meeting up. To me, I find it hard to I find that I mean, this verdict is shocking to me because if it had been revealed that there was an affair happening, and in that moment he raged out and killed her, yeah, that's absolutely the to me, that's the verdict is
Sure.
manslaughter because of whatever passion or whatever you want provocation. But it had been going on, like he'd known about it for months.
Yeah.
Why all of a sudden was it that night? Okay, I guess you could say, well, she came home late, but his own words, she was often home. She often stayed out all night.
Yep.
Or his other words, she often was home by 1. She was home by 1. She rolled in around 12:45 from what I remember. So there's nothing different about this night than any other night. But what was different about this night is you had made shoes ahead of time with different soles on the bottom, which I am
Yeah.
so sorry. I can't buy that that was just for funsies.
Oh, yeah.
He made those shoes to commit the murder.
100% he did.
Again, I can't see any other reason. We also know they'd gotten into a fight and he punched a hole through a bedroom door prior to this time.
Yep.
So now we're getting a pattern of violence. Again, if he had killed her at that time, perhaps then it's a crime of passion, whatever you want to say, provocation. The fact that she found a condom in his luggage and thought he was having an affair, what do you bet he tried? What do you bet he got those condoms and he tried to have an affair? And what do you bet he was rejected? And what do you bet that
Mm.
that rejection was a part of the simmering, boiling anger inside of him about feeling like a cuck because his wife had been cheating on him with a younger man? Yeah, I went there.
Yeah.
This is
Didn't
what
see
everybody
I didn't see
missed
it
2
coming.
glasses of wine, Ash. I mean, come on.
I just didn't see it coming.
Nobody did. I stand by it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just
Oh,
also like
100%.
the fact too. Oh, we tried calling her. Me and the kids tried calling her. We were all in bed together watching a movie while she was at work. He's building an alibi. He's clearly
Yeah.
trying to show, look how much I cared and I was calling her and whatever. Come on. I think he knew the minute she left for work that day. I think he knew she was going to go meet up with him, with Enyo after work. And I think at that point, he
Yeah.
was like, enough's enough. That's
Oh,
what I
yeah.
think.
And since she grabbed a suitcase, I have a feeling that he was ready for her. Like he was sitting at the door, like waiting for her to come in. And as soon as she came in, he lost his mind. So she's like, great, I'll just get my stuff and go.
Right.
And then he was like, you're not leaving me.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't want to know. And I agree with you that I hope that those children have had wonderful lives, given the fact, especially they don't have a mother and all of these things. I'm curious what those children heard that night.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Especially if they slept in your bed. Did they not wake up when you got back into the bed at 6 in the morning?
Great question.
Like it just,
Also,
oh,
does hydrogen peroxide get rid of blood? I mean, I would have thought, like, again, bleach, we hear about bleach a lot, maybe even alcohol, but is hydrogen peroxide doing the job?
I don't know. The only mention of bleach was, that raccoon in his youth.
Terrifying.
So I don't know if he's ever considered bleach since then, but yeah, I don't know what I assume hydrogen peroxide was just the only thing he had around
Yeah.
the house, maybe? I don't know. But
Um,
yeah, I thought it was an interesting choice.
right?
Maybe he was just hoping if it doesn't get rid of the blood, it would screw with it enough that they wouldn't be able to verify it was hers.
Maybe. Again, I'm curious of the science on this since, he was a doctor.
Of
Um,
course.
the fact that he confessed to the murder, asked for a paper to write his confession, and then wrote a timeline of his own life is the most clinical narcissist example I've ever heard in my entire life. I mean, the fact
Sure.
that it was like, I'll write down my confession. Here's my life story.
In almost like a haiku, like not a
It's
haiku, but like
pathological.
it was very poem-like.
Yeah.
And
But that's,
just
again, this isn't something that someone with a typical brain does.
yeah.
Can you imagine you've killed your partner and you're going, you're right, let me write this down for you.
Yeah.
Let me tell you a little bit about me.
Also, he said that they were married for 10 years, they were married for 14.
There it is.
Sorry, 13. It would have been their 14th year. So it's
Then you
almost
said
like he only liked the first 10.
well, that's what it sounds like. Then you said Frankenstein footwear, and I said, yay to you. Love and alliteration.
Thank you so much.
Um, I The image of him somehow driving from the passenger side.
Oh, I know.
Here's the other thing, bro. You can drive that you if he drove that car, that proves nothing. Any good fucking defense attorney would be like, he's driven the car before. If you find his DNA, that doesn't mean anything. Like the fact that he went to the trouble
Oh, yeah. I
is
actually wish
also
I
to
could have
me
seen it. It would have been ridiculous.
beyond, beyond ridiculous. Um, the fact that he immediately did an interview with Dateline, this man is the poster child for narcissism. Again, I don't throw the term around. We're talking about a personality disorder here. That's what this really feels like to me, because that is a wild move. And then the fact that he swings back into, I didn't do it. I'm an innocent man. Here's the book that I
Oh,
wrote about it. That's the most narcissistic thing I've ever heard. The belief that it's like you're smarter than everybody. So it's like, I confessed to a crime, but now I can tell everybody that I didn't actually do it. And they'll buy my
yeah.
book.
Yeah. I
Killing.
mean, I, again, I couldn't find any copies for free. I also didn't want to read it. Because it's like 600 pages or something. Like it's intense. Um, so I went on like Goodreads looking for reviews. And so many people are like, it's like a textbook more than anything. And he just kind of always talks about himself, and it's just too much. But so many of the reviews, so many of them that I lost count, were like, I'm reviewing this because I received the book for free in exchange for reviewing it. And I was like, I bet. I bet.
Oh, God.
And hey, thank you for saying that.
I love that.
Don't don't beat around the bush. Don't tell me, "Oh, I loved it," just because I got it for like eh, tell me the truth.
Yeah.
I agreed to give a review, so that's how I got the book for free. It's like, I'm glad to know he wasn't selling the book. Also, the cover of the book, I believe, is like an American flag with a photo of his family, like him and his wife, who he absolutely murdered, and their children. But I love that it's like, ah, oh, the police really railroaded me here. And it's like, the rich white man. Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, exactly. And again, the fact that she was having an affair, so it was like, well, what does she expect? Like that kind of attitude feels
Oh,
so infuriating to me.
it's maddening.
Um, yeah. Uh, then the revelation
Mm.
that this fuck
Thank you.
has not only killed his wife,
Yep.
has not only done very little time for it,
Yep.
now he's selling people fake drugs, telling them it will cure the cancer in their dogs.
Yep.
There is a special place in hell for this man. All of these things together, that's sick. And
100%.
playing on people who are desperate to try and do anything to just prolong the life
Mhm.
of the animal that many consider to be family members, in my case, my children. The idea that someone would play upon that,
Oh, yeah.
knowing, knowing that he is just scamming people,
Yep.
is such proof to me of this man's diagnoses I've given, and
Sure.
also that listen, I'm alleging, we're speculating, but that's the kind of person that is capable of murder.
Yes.
Someone who is truly unfeeling about someone else, that wants to do something for their own personal gain. And then the thing I wrote down at this moment was shades of OJ, because I feel
Oh,
like it's the same kind of situation where then later OJ got arrested for something completely different. It's the same with this guy. It's like you didn't do much time for killing your wife. And then guess what? It comes back to you because it's that kind of person, a true narcissist that's like, I'm smarter. I'm above the law. I'm smarter than the police. I'm smarter than all these people. I can get away with all of this. And of course they don't. Of
I
course
love
they
that for
don't.
them.
Yeah, me too. Um, And then, of course, I was like, the true tragedy that this man was sentenced to the same amount of time for fraud as, which, by the way, I think he completely deserved. But
Yes.
that was the same amount of time that he got for admitting to killing his wife. Feels again like, what are we doing? This is
Yeah.
absolutely appalling.
100%.
And truly one of the cases that has gotten me more riled up than any other in recent history.
Yeah. Look, I didn't know about uh the dog part until research. I knew about like the general idea about the other stuff when I picked it. And then just did like a Google of like where is he now? I had hoped dead. But I did not anticipate selling fake cancer drugs. I did not anticipate that at all.
It's so sick.
100%.
So sick.
The guy's a piece of shit.
Yeah. What a wild one.
Yeah.
A truly wild one. Oh my God. Well, listen, if ever there was a man to make us rage against the machine once again, here we are. Really scratched the itch for us screaming about men.
Yeah.
Um, in this case, of course, old straight white men who are trying to well, first of all, hurt other people to
Yep.
the point of killing them, and then also yeah, scamming people who are, desperate in a sense to save their pets.
Yep.
Disgusting. Disgusting.
Oh,
Like I said,
absolutely.
special place in hell. And I'm not alleging or speculating that. I mean that one.
I like that.
That's my
I
opinion.
like
I
that.
think there's a special place in hell for people like that. I do.
Yes. There has to be. Otherwise, where's the
Yeah.
justice?
There's got to be karmic justice at some point, and
Has
I
to be.
hope that it comes back in spades. Christy Oxborrow, fantastic work as always. This one kept me at the edge of my seat. I'm livid. I'm not going to forget his poetry anytime soon, and I hope to.
Well, I have written down the quote, "This is a real rager." So just know that stuck with me.
I love it. And listen, thank you, dear listeners. Thank you, dear listeners, for joining us on
Ooh.
this ride. We want to thank you. If you haven't already, give us a follow on the socials on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at True Crime and Cocktails, on Twitter at Not Detectives. If you want some bonus content, go over to patreon.com/True Crime and Cocktails to learn more about our subscription-based service over there. And of course, the only place for official True Crime and Cocktails merch is truecrewmerch.com. So check that out as well if you're interested. Christy, you want to tell the people about next week's episode?
I do, but first I want to tell you, if I close my eyes, it's like I'm watching my cousin Vinny.
Oh, that's a blessing.
I'm saying it
That's a
right there.
compliment. Thank you.
Saying it right there. On the next True Crime and Cocktails, the Rillington Place Strangler.
Another case I've never heard of, and I cannot wait to learn more from my best gal, as always. Christy, do you want to say goodnight to the people?
Good night, Garnet Hathaway.
Good night, squirrels.